Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. Alright guys, buckle up, because things are getting really tense down in Miami. I'm talking about the kind of tension you can feel in the air, the kind that makes you wonder if we're about to see one of the most shocking mid-season coaching changes in the NFL. According to Tony Pauline, a guy who's been around the league long enough to know where the smoke usually hides the fire, Dolphins owner Stephen Ross might be running out of patience with head coach Mike McDaniel. Yeah, you heard that right. The same McDaniel who was once hailed as an offensive mastermind, a football genius, the new age coach who was supposed to turn Miami into a juggernaut. But right now, his seat might be hotter than the Florida sun in July. So here's what Pauline is saying. After that brutal Week 1 blowout, word around the league was that Ross wanted results fast. He wasn't about to let this season spiral like so many others have for Miami. Reportedly, McDaniel was told that he had about 6 or 7 games to right the ship to prove that his vision for this team still made sense. Fast forward a few weeks, and that grace period seems to be shrinking like Miami's playoff hopes. Those same league sources now believe McDaniel could be out of a job within the next 2 to 3 games if things don't turn around fast. That's not speculation anymore. That's a countdown. And the timing could not be worse. The Dolphins just blew a 17-0 lead against the Carolina Panthers. A 17-point cushion gone. Vanished. Just like that, Miami is now sitting at 1-4, and the fan base is losing it. The locker room looks frustrated, the media is circling, and Stephen Ross is reportedly not amused. You can almost picture him sitting in his owner's box, watching that second half collapse, thinking, what on earth happened to the team I built? For an owner who's already had to deal with years of disappointment, from questionable quarterback decisions to coaching changes that never quite stuck, this has to feel like déjà vu all over again. Now, to be fair, there are reports saying Ross doesn't actually want to pull the trigger, that he wants to show patience, to give McDaniel the chance to prove himself. But let's be honest, patience in the NFL is a luxury most owners just don't have, especially when the losses keep piling up and the fan base starts demanding accountability. You can almost feel the pressure bubbling up from every direction. And let's not forget, the next 3 games on Miami's schedule are against the Chargers, the Browns, and the Falcons. Not exactly a murderer's row, but not cakewalks either. Those are 3 winnable games, or 3 more reasons for Ross to make a drastic move if this team doesn't wake up. Now, this story doesn't just stop with McDaniel. According to Pauline, GM Chris Grier might also be skating on thin ice. Apparently, there's less certainty about whether he'd be fired mid-season, but make no mistake, his seat isn't exactly cool either. When you look at this roster, on paper it should be much better than 1-4. You've got weapons like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a quarterback who was supposed to finally be hitting his stride, and yet the product on the field just isn't matching the hype. Somewhere along the line, the vision that McDaniel and Grier sold to Ross, that fast-paced, explosive, innovative football identity, has just fizzled. It's crazy when you think about it, because Mike McDaniel's story is actually one of those classic NFL fairy tales. The guy started as an intern with the Denver Broncos back in 2005, worked his way up the ladder, offensive assistant gigs in Houston, Washington, Cleveland, Atlanta, bouncing around like so many other grinders in the league. Then he really started making waves when he joined the 49ers as a run game coordinator in 2017. That's where people started saying, hey, this guy gets it. By 2021, he was Kyle Shanahan's offensive coordinator, helping design one of the most creative ground games in football. The Dolphins saw that and said, that's our guy. They gave him the keys to the franchise in 2022, signed him to a 4-year deal, and handed him one of the fastest rosters in the league. For a while, it looked like a match made in football heaven. And let's be real, when McDaniel first took over, it felt like Miami had finally found their guy. The offense was electric, TUA TAGOVAILOA looked rejuvenated, and the team had swagger again. That 2022 season, when they were lighting up the scoreboard early on, fans were dreaming big. But then came the injuries, the defensive breakdowns, the inconsistency, and the playoffs. Well, let's just say the Dolphins haven't exactly been a postseason powerhouse under McDaniel. 2 playoff appearances, 0 wins. That's the kind of stat that keeps an owner up at night. You can have all the creativity in the world, but in this league, results talk. And that brings us to what might be the most fascinating part of this entire situation, the potential next step. According to Pauline's sources, if McDaniel does get the boot, the Dolphins are expected to pivot in a completely different direction. The word is that Stephen Ross wants to bring in a disciplinarian type, someone who can come in, command the locker room, and put an end to the chaos. And one name that's already been floated? None other than Rex Ryan. Yeah, that Rex Ryan, the former Jets and Bills head coach, the larger-than-life personality who once built one of the nastiest defenses in football and wasn't afraid to say exactly what he thought. Now imagine that for a second. The Miami Dolphins, a team that's been built on speed, finesse, and offensive flair, suddenly turning to Rex Ryan, a guy whose entire coaching DNA is toughness, grit, and defensive swagger. That would be one heck of a shift in philosophy. But maybe that's exactly what Ross wants. Maybe he's tired of watching his team fall apart in the second half of games. Maybe he wants an old-school enforcer who's not afraid to hold guys accountable. Because let's face it, when you're 1-4 and blowing double-digit leads, something's clearly not clicking. But there's a deeper question here, one that goes beyond wins and losses. Has the NFL already started to figure Mike McDaniel out? When he first arrived, his offense felt fresh, unpredictable, even revolutionary. Defenses couldn't keep up with all the motion, the timing, the explosive play designs. But this is the NFL, and the NFL always adjusts. It feels like teams have started to catch on. They've studied McDaniel's tendencies, disrupted his timing, taken away his easy reads. And without that element of surprise, the Dolphins' offense has looked ordinary. If that's the case, then McDaniel's biggest challenge isn't just fixing the Dolphins. It's reinventing himself before it's too late. The irony in all of this is that McDaniel is still a brilliant football mind. Nobody denies that. He's smart, articulate, and creative. Players seem to like him. But sometimes in this league, being liked isn't enough. You need results. You need leadership that transcends schemes and playbooks. And maybe, just maybe, Stephen Ross is starting to wonder if McDaniel has that. Because at the end of the day, the NFL is a results business. Coaches don't get graded on how clever their play designs are. They get graded on the scoreboard. And you can feel it, can't you? The tension building before something big happens. The Dolphins are entering what could be the defining stretch of their season. The Chargers, Browns, and Falcons, 3 games that could decide the fate of not just Mike McDaniel, but maybe even Chris Greer too. If they win, maybe the noise quiets down. Maybe McDaniel buys himself more time. Maybe the narrative shifts back to hope. But if they lose, if those same issues keep showing up, if the Dolphins keep collapsing late in games, then the writing might already be on the wall. You can already imagine the headlines if that happens. Dolphins fire Mike McDaniel. Rex Ryan returns to the sidelines. Miami resets once again. It's a story we've seen before, too many times, honestly, where promise turns to frustration and another coach becomes just another chapter in the Dolphins' long search for stability. At the end of the day, you can't help but feel for McDaniel. The guy climbed the mountain the hard way. He earned every shot he got. But the NFL doesn't care about your journey. It cares about what you can do today. And right now, the Miami Dolphins need wins, not potential, not style, not good vibes, wins. Otherwise, this might be the final act in the Mike McDaniel era in Miami. Stay tuned, because however this plays out, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Whether McDaniel manages to pull off a mid-season turnaround or whether Stephen Ross decides to make a bold move, one thing's for sure. The next few weeks are going to define the future of this franchise. And in Miami, where patience has always been thin and expectations sky-high, that clock is ticking louder than ever. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? It's official, or at least, it's what everyone's whispering behind closed doors, in locker rooms, on sports radio, and across social media. Tua Tagovailoa is no longer the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. The news has sent shockwaves through the NFL, leaving fans in disbelief and analysts scrambling to piece together what exactly went wrong. For years, Tua had been viewed as the franchise's golden boy, the young talent who was supposed to lead the Dolphins into a new era of dominance, someone who could carry the weight of expectations in Miami with the poise and precision that had been his hallmark in college. And yet, here we are, with a rumor that feels like it's straight out of a soap opera, unfolding in real time, and leaving a cloud of questions in its wake. Everyone is asking the same thing. What happened to the golden boy of Miami? From the moment Tua stepped onto the field with the Dolphins, there was optimism, almost bordering on hype, that he could become the next big quarterback sensation. People forget he was drafted with such high expectations, not just for his physical skill set, his pinpoint accuracy, his quick release, his ability to read defenses, but for his intelligence, his ability to remain calm under pressure, and his leadership qualities that seemed so innate. But football is a game of numbers, and Tua's numbers, while promising at points, have always been a mixed bag. Injuries, those devastating and recurring injuries that no athlete wants to endure, have always been part of his narrative. And even in a league that's increasingly patient with young quarterbacks, the whispers started early, in quiet corners of practice facilities and media rooms. Maybe Tua isn't the answer. Maybe the Dolphins need something different. Maybe the magic everyone expected just isn't there. The buzz intensified over the past few weeks, as murmurs turned into chatter and chatter turned into speculation. Every fan on social media had their opinion, every sports talk host had their insider sources. And suddenly, it seemed like the inevitable was becoming inevitable. People started talking about cap space, about trades, about potential replacements who could bring a spark of unpredictability that Tua, for all his talent, hadn't managed to ignite consistently. The organization, always careful with their messaging, remained tight-lipped, but you could almost sense the tension building. Behind closed doors, according to sources who asked not to be named, the front office was debating, second-guessing, and planning quietly, knowing that the decision to move on from a quarterback, even one with as much potential as Tua, was not just a football decision, but a statement. And then it happened. Reports started leaking late last night, initially small, tentative, almost like someone testing the waters. Tua TAGOVAILOA not starting for Miami next season. From there, the rumor took on a life of its own. Fans who had defended Tua fiercely suddenly found themselves in shock, their Twitter feeds exploding with disbelief, with memes, with angry rants, with heartfelt tributes to the player they had invested so much hope in. Indiana. Analysts dissected every play from the last season, every missed throw, every ill-timed interception, every glance of frustration that made its way onto the broadcast, looking for clues that might explain the unthinkable. Some claimed it was injuries. Others pointed to a lack of mobility or the inability to execute under pressure consistently. Still others whispered that the locker room dynamics had shifted, that leadership alone was not enough when the team's aspirations were so high. The speculation doesn't end there. Rumors are now swirling around who might replace him. Names have been tossed around in hushed tones, some bold, some purely speculative, ranging from veteran quarterbacks looking for one last chance to prove they belong, to untested rookies with sky-high potential. There's talk of trades, talks of draft picks, and an undercurrent of panic among fans who were just starting to believe that the Dolphins had found their future. One thing is certain, Miami is at a crossroads. Moving on from Tua is more than just benching a player. It's a seismic shift in strategy, a gamble that could either catapult the team to new heights or leave them scrambling for answers. And the irony isn't lost on anyone. Tua, once the symbol of hope, the face of a new Miami, now becomes the center of the biggest rumor in the NFL this offseason. Some insiders even suggest that this decision wasn't solely about performance. Personality clashes, coaching philosophies, and even off-field dynamics might have played a role. Tua's quiet, methodical style, which was once praised as maturity beyond his years, may have clashed with a locker room that thrives on energy, assertiveness, and vocal leadership. Coaches who value emotional intensity might have felt that Tua's calm demeanor was misread as passivity. Meanwhile, the front office, caught between loyalty and ambition, may have decided that change was the only way to signal seriousness to the fan base, to sponsors, and to the rest of the league. The Dolphins aren't here to be patient anymore. They want results, and they want them now. It's also worth noting the financial dimension of this rumor. Tua's contract, which seemed modest when it was signed, may have suddenly become a sticking point in a league where every dollar is scrutinized. If Miami is exploring the possibility of trading for another quarterback or signing a free agent with a higher profile, money becomes an unavoidable consideration. The cap implications, the potential draft picks, and the strategic maneuvers all feed into the rumor mill, giving fans countless angles to speculate about, from the purely tactical to the heartbreakingly personal. In short, the situation is a perfect storm of performance, personality, finances, and perception, exactly the kind of storm that fuels endless discussion and debate. And let's not forget the human element. Tua himself has not publicly confirmed anything, but sources claim he's been briefed and is processing the news privately. For a young man whose life has been under the microscope since his college days, this moment is seismic. Fans, naturally, are torn between empathy and outrage. Social media is a battleground, with hashtags trending both in support of and in opposition to the organization's rumored decision. Every sports bar, every podcast, every local news outlet in Miami seems to be buzzing with a single question: who will quarterback the Dolphins now? And what does this mean for the team's identity moving forward? The timing of the rumor adds another layer of intrigue. It comes just as the Dolphins were trying to consolidate their position in a hyper-competitive division, at a moment when momentum and perception matter as much as talent. A mid-season shakeup or an off-season trade has ramifications that go far beyond the field. Players, coaches, and fans are now all part of an invisible narrative, waiting to see how the next chapter unfolds. Meanwhile, NFL insiders are already predicting domino effects. If Tua is moved, how will that affect other quarterback markets? Which teams will make bold moves? How will Miami recover from the shockwave? And most importantly, will Tua land somewhere that can finally maximize the potential everyone believed he had from the start? In the end, what makes this rumor so gripping, so captivating, is that it's not just about football. It's about expectation, disappointment, ambition, and reinvention. It's about a young man whose career trajectory has always been a story of hope and potential, suddenly facing an uncertain future. It's about an organization that wants to signal seriousness and commitment to winning, even if it means breaking the heart of a fan base. And it's about the drama of the NFL itself, where change can come swiftly, sometimes silently, and sometimes in a way that leaves everyone talking, speculating, and, inevitably, arguing. For Miami, for Tua, and for the millions of fans watching this rumor unfold, one thing is certain. The quarterback story that seems so set in stone has suddenly become the most talked about mystery in football, and nobody knows exactly what comes next. The whispers are louder than ever. The speculation is relentless, and the only certainty is uncertainty. Tua Tagovailoa, once the face of hope in Miami, is no longer in the spotlight as the Dolphins' quarterback, and the ripple effects of that shift are only beginning to be felt. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.